All right, page 169, Universal Language in Antiquity. Long ago, there was a single global civilization, a universal code of law, a religious system and canon, recognized branches of science, and even one race of people. All of this was unified by a single language and mathematical system. Every bit of this was destroyed, and only fragments have been preserved in obscure monumental iconography, religious statuary, old teachings believed to be mythic, the rituals of cults and priestly sects, the biblical records and other remarkably detailed writings from long ago, and the legends and lore of seemingly primitive peoples who remember phenomena and institutions far more advanced than they are capable of understanding. All too often we read that writing was invented by the Sumerians prior to 3000 BC, but this conclusive assertion is based solely on the fact that no other writings found exhibit evidence of earlier antiquity. While this appears as sound logic, the Sumerians themselves claimed that they were the descendants of those intellectual masters who survived the deluge. Their tablet records affirm that highly advanced writings in mathematics existed prior to this cataclysm. Writing was thus not an invention, but a preservation, a fact clearly evident in that Sumerian exhibits no signs of development. This is because its earliest formative periods were buried deeply by the flood, and the earlier culture that later became Sumer was not located where the post-Diluvian settlers occupied. The end of Sumer was not geographically in the same place as the beginning of this people. Their original lands of origin could have been anywhere on this planet, even a locale presently a mile under the ocean. Three of the oldest accounts known to scholars, but relegated to myth, concerning a primordial universal language are strikingly similar in construction. Once upon a time, the whole universe, the people in unison, to Enlil in one tongue gave praise. 29. Sumerian text of Enmerkar and the Lord of Arakata. And the whole earth was of one language and one speech. Genesis 11:1. And all the earth was of one tongue and words of union. Book of Jasher 7:46. As does Genesis and Jasher convey, so too does Enmerkar text reveal that there was a rift in man's ability to communicate, a fact recorded by the Babylonian historian Berosus, who wrote, "The gods introduced a diversity of tongues among men who until that time had all spoken the same language." 30. This has been confirmed by the archaeologist G. Smith, who over 100 years ago found a Babylonian tablet that reads, "The building of the illustrious tower offended the gods. In the night they threw down what they had made. They scattered them abroad and made strange their speech." 31. In the Jubilees account, we find that Abraham learned the language which has been revealed, for it had ceased from all the mouths of the children of men. 32. It was by learning this elder language that he was able to translate the inscriptions upon the casing blocks of the Great Pyramid. Even across the planet, we discover in the Mayan Popol Vuh that in the olden days all the earth spoke one language. 33. And many Native Americans believed that their ancestors spoke a beloved speech. 34. Even the Egyptian historian Manetho wrote that there once existed a universal sacred language. 35, which leads us to the Greek accounts, this Aegean culture having so many uncanny connections with Egypt. According to Pliny, Aristides claimed that an Egyptian named Menes invented the alphabet. 36. Menes means moon, a Greek reference to the wedge-shaped characters of cuneiform writing that was invented by the Sumerians, and Menes was merely the beginning of the Egyptian dynastic history. The name Menes being the same as Anam, a famous Babylonian king from Sumer who left the Persian Gulf area to rule over Egypt, is shown in Lost Scriptures. Anam was ruling when Abram, learned in all the mysteries of Thoth, visited Egypt and translated the writings for Pharaoh's court found on the Great Pyramid after it was excavated from the diluvial deposits. Thoth is an Egyptian memory of Enoch, builder of the Great Pyramid by design, Sethites constructing it, who is called Palamedes in Greek. Palamedes Thoth and Enoch are the same person, inventor of the alphabet before the cataclysm, whose Greek name means ancient intelligence. 37. The famous Sibylline Oracles, 38, reads that on an early date on earth, the tongues of men were diversified by various sounds, and the whole earth of humans was filled with fragmenting kingdoms. 39. And the Greek historian Hestius studied olden traditions, learning that the survivors of a flood settled in Shinar in Babylonia, but were driven away later by a diversity of tongues. 40. Even Plato asserted as much in his Symposium. He wrote, "There was a time, I say, when we were one, but now because of the wickedness of mankind, God has dispersed us. And if we are not obedient to the gods, there is danger that we shall be split up again." 41. It is truly a credit to the ancient Greeks that the New Testament books were composed in this script. The Hebrews claimed that their language is of divine origin, and its association to numerical values of interest to this thesis cannot be doubted. The Greek alphabet shares this characteristic with the Hebrew. The Greek is a highly symbolic alphabet based off of an older one constructed with letters that were originally symbols of great and universal antiquity. This was probably hidden to the average literate Greek, but was definitely known to mystic sages who comprehended their geometrical values. The fourth letter of the Greek alphabet was delta, the number for the earth that intriguingly was linked to the idea of a door or gate. The eighth letter is H, which is but an abbreviated form of the ladder of heaven, pillar, pyramid icon, an appropriate symbol for the number representing the new beginning of something. In Greek, the number 10 is depicted as a pillar, and the number 70 is a circle. The number 80 is a glyph so old that it continues to baffle historians, this being the principal design of thousands of dolmens found all around the world. Even upon South Pacific atolls and tiny islands bare of other monuments, these rock portals are found everywhere. There happens to be 5 of them forming the inner sanctuary of Stonehenge. The number 700, circle times the pillar, is the enigmatic trident, or upper half of the tree of life. Is that the Alpha or the Omega? Is 800, the Omega symbol that represents the end, which the sign for the constellation Leo evolved from. The number 900, 100 times judgment, happens to retain its antediluvian significance, for 900 is the sickle of judgment used by the gardener when his harvest, mankind, has bore fruit. In lost scriptures, we find a tremendous amount of evidence linking the Great Pyramid structure to the concept of gigantic stone tree linking heaven and earth, because it was a gigantic pillar between the two, providing a hidden gate to humanity, geometrically concealing the name of God in living stone. This same concept is discovered within the meaning of the word name in Semitic language, Shem, which also maintains a variant interpretation as monument, a word preserved in the Egyptian root sem, which signifies a representation on the ground of likeness. 42, better understood as a symbol. And this is exactly the purpose of symbols, to convey knowledge by visual forms attached to significant meanings of 10 with ideas very different than the geometry conveys. The universal symbol of the tree is probably the most widely recognized image in the entire ancient and modern world, the triangle being the second and by far. The mystic association of the pyramid being a symbol of the divine tree is alluded to in the Alexandrian writings of the book of Adam and Eve, where we read, "For we know thy marvelous works, O God, that they are great, and that by the power thou canst bring one thing out of another without one's wish. For thy power can make rocks to become trees, and trees to become rocks." 43. This is evidence that the sages of Alexandria knew more about the background scenes of the Genesis story of Eden than is taught even today. The Babylonians, Chaldeans, and other Euphratian cultures regarded the cedar tree as the revealer of the oracles of heaven and earth. 44. And trees are a part of a kingship iconography in Sumerian and Akkadian. The tree was a symbol for that which endures, that which unifies heaven and earth, which is why we find that humanity in the zodiacal symbolism is identified with the exact same symbol as that used to depict the weapon of the gods against the adversary in chaos. Man is the thunderbolt, the Vajra of India, and the divine battle axe, the Labris of the creator against those gods that rebelled against him. The high branches of the tree in heaven and the low roots in the ground in the underworld were linked together by the trunk of this organic pillar, just as humanity unified heaven and earth by the fusion of a divine spirit empowered by God within a frail shell of human flesh made out earthen clay. Trees were fitting examples of eternal life. They are the oldest living organisms on the planet. There stand trees today in the United States that were already 2,000 years old when Christ walked the earth 2,000 years ago. These 4,000-year-old living fossils are huge, called Sequoia gigantea in the western states, known as the famous redwoods, which are only a few centuries older than the ancient bristlecone pines. These incredible forests began growing shortly after the deluge in 2239 BC, and they show no signs of dying. These dateless organic pillars of the earth do not die by natural causes. Termites do not affect them, and they are as strong and dense as they were thousands of years ago. Similar trees of great antiquity have been found on uninhabited South Pacific islands, and the biblical texts and Sumerian writings tell of the legendary cedars of Lebanon that were also renowned for their immense size and age before they were lost to construction projects throughout the Middle East as far as Egypt. The longevity of trees and their productions useful to mankind is why the scriptures read that the tree of the field is a man's life. Had not the flood brought ruin to the old world's ecological systems and civilization, changing the topography, soil distribution, and climates, then these forests of primordial trees would not be between 4,300 and 2,300 years old, but much older. The tree was a symbol of knowledge, an idea conveyed in Genesis in the Tree of Knowledge and at Giza, where the Great Pyramid was anciently covered in millions of minute inscriptions long ago. All knowledge known today is written upon trees, each book a branch of human experience spread throughout forests of libraries where all men visit to attain understanding. Every time we read words on paper, placards, poster, billboards, we learn from trees. The advancements of our technological micro-industrialized civilization have not altered this archaic fundamental truth. The link between trees and learning was known in the days of Aristotle, who wrote that knowledge was divided into branches, 45. Even older than the Greek alphabet is the Chinese pictograph, writing, a mode of literal communication where symbols convey entire thoughts and ideas. Truly do these characters need qualified attention to detect symbolic associations with our thesis. The word tempter in Chinese is made up of a unique combination of characters that means independently devil, cover, and tree, 46. These three ideas are definitely biblical, for the tempter, or Lucifer, was the cherub that covereth, who fell and was replaced by another, who is symbolized at Giza as the Sphinx guardian that covers the entrance of the deep. He was the devil who used knowledge obtained from the tree of Eden to tempt Eve. What is absolutely fascinating here is that the early Chinese symbol for tree, from its origin to its later stylized modifications, embodied the same concept as that particularly ancient symbol for man, 47.